Hello everyone, and welcome to This Nintendo Life. My name is NBZ, and we're here at episode 84 of this grand old podcast, and Bally, the weeks are counting down. Switch is coming. I can see him down the street. He's popping into grandma's, he's having a sip of tea, but he's coming out of there and he's pouncing on down. He's gonna be here very soon. Very soon.
And that, like, the last time we were recording, it was a crazy time of day, and I'm just grateful that this time it's a bit better, you know? Like, it's a bit more normal.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend waking up at 3 in the morning, watching a thing, then live streaming yourself talking about that thing, and then staying up for the rest of that entire day watching everything about the thing, because that's what I did. You, Bal,
I went
of course,
to work.
Yeah, you had a full day ahead of you, and then probably came back home and just died. Although you did say you had a nap after watching the Switch event.
I did. So I was bearable.
Yeah, not too bad, which is all we can hope for in those circumstances. But we're refreshed, we're fully back, we're ready to talk about video games, talk about Nintendo, because there are a lot of things to discuss. In the wake of Nintendo's announcements about the Switch, there have been many opinions, many thoughts, and we are going to add to the noise, because that's just what we do. That's why we're here. That's why we made this podcast.
We're a Nintendo podcast, MBZ. It's the rules.
Is it? Okay. No one told me. Well, now I know. Now we can obey them. And now we can tell you what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the episode. Bally, how about you lay the ground rules?
As usual, we're going to talk about what we've been playing, and then for the second segment, it's going to be an extended segment again, and this time we're going to bring in some of your emails following the Switch reveal, and have a discussion, a bit of a come down, a bit of a post-hype think about what's going on and the hype train that is fast approaching.
Indeed, yeah, we absolutely have many issues to address. There are things that were announced in the wake of the Switch, so there's lots of hot takes coming. Be prepared. Hopefully next time we'll get back to a regular format of show. It's just been, since Game of the Year, Bally, it's just been a whirlwind of like, oh, well, we need to have emails at some point, but it's not really working into the fact that Nintendo decided, hey, straight after Christmas, let's announce a thing that is very significant.
Exactly.
So we'll get back to that next time. As always, you can send your emails to our email address, which is Bally.
ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. We need more, and we will hopefully get back to a regular email segment next time.
Yes, indeed. So, without further ado, Bally, let's talk about the video games, what we've been playing. You, sir, have played a video game. How about you tell them about it?
Well, it wouldn't be a what we've been playing segment without talking about some more Nintendo Humble Bundle from the start of 2016.
Oh my goodness, we thought that 2016 was behind us, but clearly not. It seeps into 2017.
Not. So this is a game that you've also played a while back, and that is Retro City Rampage DX. I believe this
can't remember if I even talked about this on the show.
I don't think you did, and like I believe this came out on loads of different systems, and this obviously came out on 3DS.
This is a game that has a history. I think it was originally slated to release on the Wii, and then there may have been issues resulting in file sizes. I'm not sure if that was just the thing with Meat Boy, or if that there is a history here with this game and it trying to release on Nintendo systems and not being able to. It's been around a long time, and it's definitely it's good that it finally came out on 3DS and everything. But yeah, I think there's some history there, even if I don't know the specifics.
So this is like your standard top-down GTA sort of clone, and it's got a bit of a twist. The twist is that it's very retro, and that it makes fun of lots of other games and retro things from the 80s and things like that. And I've never really played like a top-down open world game before, so this was a real sort of itch I'd never tried to scratch, and I think that this game does it well, actually. I think it's fast-paced, it doesn't hang around. Even some of the levels, some of the more tough levels, like once you fail on them a number of times, you can just skip them entirely if you want. And like I never did
really?
This. Yes, some levels give you the option.
I had no idea. Yeah. Bally, if I could have done that on some parts of this game, I would have done that.
I say that, but I want to say that on some of the toughest levels in the game, such as final bosses, other bosses,
true, yeah,
rooms of spawning enemies that take forever, that you can't skip some of those, but there were others where you could. So
yeah,
It's cool. I think the references are great. It's very tongue-in-cheek. It warns you at the start of the game.
Man, this game doesn't stop to breathe for references. It's
Never.
like it just fucking throws them at you like a ninja with katana stars. Like you're trying to dodge out of the way and they're just like, no. Here's some Metal Gear, here's some Mario, here's some fucking Zelda. Here's like, they just throw it at your face constantly.
And then there's like real on-the-nose stuff where there's like a radioactive plumber that like bites you or something, and then it gives you the power to do like a proper jump, and the radioactive plumber just looks like a deranged Mario, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
Is Nintendo okay with this? How are they getting away with this? And sort of at the start of the game they warn, I think it's more a message to developers more so than even the people playing the game, and it's just like, we're having fun, calm down, don't sue us, let us have our fun sort of message.
You know, parody is protected by copyright, not copyright, by
Absolutely. It's just it's as fun as parody is, you can still argue it can be very grey area sometimes.
Yeah.
So the references are fantastic. Like you said, there's even like the NES Zapper is in there. It's like one of the final weapons you get, and it's just hilarious. There's loads of Back to the Future. Like your main sort of accomplice is like Doc from Back
he's
to
Doc
the
Brown.
Future.
100%.
Exactly, and there's some crazy, like you see the car is just so based off Back to the Future and stuff like that, and I like all that. It's all works quite well. I think that the game is ever so slightly a little bit too long for me. I think it took me about 6.5 hours, which is a bit slow. I did struggle on some parts.
Let me ask you, Bally, were you reading all the dialogue and doing all that stuff?
I was, and I'm glad I did, because there's some funny stuff in there. The story is not... It's so crazy that you can take it or leave it, sort of. It's not like there's any meaning to what's going on. There's just these crazy characters that's like one reference to this, one reference to that, and there's this crazy other guy, he lives in this building, he does this one thing, and then you're constantly shooting between lots of different characters that you're not really keeping up with. And that's totally what the game's going for, and fair play to them. I think they do it well. It's just not a very interesting story. There's nothing meaty there at all, really.
It's just an excuse for them to frame all of their kind of homages to all these games that they clearly love that much.
Yeah.
And I get it, but it was also like I very quickly realized what it was, and as a result, I just fucking mashed my way through all the dialogue. I didn't care. Because, as a framework, it's this top-down thing. It's kind of GTA inspired in terms of the old games, and that stuff is, for me, generally doesn't hold much appeal from a narrative perspective. It's all about run around and shooting things.
And I think that's the thing this game does the best, is even arguably the most boring part, and that's just that when you're running around with weapons, killing people, hijacking cars, there's a really good sense of destruction, invincibility.
I think there are some missions which are like, hey, just fuck everything up as much as you can. Like they really lean into that angle.
Yeah, and that's really cool. And like, there's somewhere you can like drive tanks at points, and there's just other cars with guns attached to them and stuff like that. And that's fun, and it's really good actually. And I do enjoy the range of weapons. They're very simple. You've got your bazooka, your machine gun, your pistol. You've got your karate moves, whatever. You can pick up like shovels and stuff. It's a nice simplistic range of weapons. I would maybe go against the game slightly where there's not enough. There's ever so slightly too much just fighting of waves of enemies.
Yes.
So on foot, I should add. Not. There's not enough. Maybe it could have been more fun to have more car chases in part of the missions, and trying to escape the cops and escape other people. And the driving mechanics are very strange, where you're literally just pointing the analog stick and your car goes there. They completely dodged any sort of trying to accelerate and then steer. And I can see why they did that. It makes it very pick up and playable. It's not the controls aren't that difficult. But for me, I've definitely played top-down driving aspects of games where they still make you accelerate and steer. And I'm not saying it's easy, but it definitely feels a lot more authentic, perhaps.
Yeah, I think the vehicles definitely are there to help you get around the world in a more speedy fashion, as opposed to being used that much integrally in mission design, because it seems like, okay, I'm getting in the car to go to this place. As soon as I'm at the place, that's when I do all the stuff that I need to do, you know, whether it be, you know, sneaking by in a box like Solid Snake, or shooting a bunch of people, or, you know, going Contra style, you know. It always throws some kind of referential thing in there, but you're always on foot when you're doing the bulk of that stuff.
Exactly. And like, this game is just trying to get you from joke to joke as fast as possible, and it's not trying to put too much in your way. There are hard parts, like I said, but overall the game's not too bad. And like I said, the sense
Did you dig into the menus at all? Because they have options there for a lot of like variety in the aesthetic, where you can have like CRT modes, and like you can change the colors really crazily. Like, there's a lot of that stuff.
I did like a 10-15 minutes of just flicking through them and finding one I liked and sticking with that. I didn't change it overly often. And you're right, there's a lot of game modes in here. There's like modes where you can just go and rack up high scores by just sort of going into destruction mode, and like you unlock another mode at the end of the game where you're given like extra power and the zapper, and you can blow up stuff and hijack tanks and all that, and that's fun. And like the game does that well. It's a very simplistic formula. I personally don't much like the retro. Sounds crazy, the whole game is based around being retro, but I don't really like. I think other styles of games work better with retro. So what I mean by that is that top-down open world, I don't think it looks great. I mean, there's an awful lot of going on the screen, and sometimes it's all a bit much. And I just think that genres like perhaps 2D platformers feel a lot more natural when you're playing them in a retro setting, like Shovel Knight, for example. Like, I think that going for a full top-down overworld game in that sort of very simplistic NES style can be a bit much. But this game does pull it off to some degree. It's just maybe not my favorite aspect.
It may also just be genre preference from your perspective, you know?
Like, true.
You've not really played many of these types of games,
exactly.
So you're maybe not warming to it as much, or you're maybe not getting the nostalgia that you would get with something like Shovel Knight.
True. So I think this game was fun. I'm glad I played it. It was ever so slightly too long, but it's amusing. It's nothing deep.
How did you feel about the overworld, the kind of the exploration of it? Because it doesn't really seem to be, in my mind, that distinctive. Like, from the top-down perspective, it's a city. And for me, a lot of the reason I don't like, well, you know,
we've talked about this before as well. You're right.
Yeah, but like the whole notion of these open worlds which are based in urban environments, unless it's a city I know, and I think that for Watch Dogs 2, a big thing that people were talking about was it kind of accurately represents San Francisco, and so everyone who lives there in the games press was talking about how much they enjoyed wandering around.
It's a bit of a cheap trick, isn't it? Let's just make a cityscape based in the place with all the people reviewing the game.
Exactly. Yeah. I did think about that a lot when people were talking about Watch Dogs. But like, imagine if they made, you know, a GTA in Edinburgh. I would be predisposed to like that game way more because I'm in a virtual version of this place I live in. I think if you're just generally in a cityscape, a lot of the time it becomes buildings and it becomes, you know, streets. And me personally, you know, Bally, I'm fucking terrible at directions. I don't know where the fuck I'm going anywhere, and I'm awful, and I hate that shit because my brain doesn't connect stuff. And so when I'm exploring an urban environment in a game, the same thing happens. Like, nothing sticks out to me, and that's why I like the fantasy settings, so The Witcher and Xenoblade and things like that. That sticks with me far stronger than a city does. And so when you come to a game like this, which is not only a city but also a top-down 2D thing, it didn't make much of an impression, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think that top-down open world is a lot easier geographically on your head, and I don't know for you if that made it any easier getting A to B, but for me it's easier to keep it all in my head because you're essentially just moving around a map.
Well, there is a map on the touch screen, so that does help.
I agree with you on the cityscape thing. We have talked about this before in the show. It's just like, you need to go somewhere with a city. It has to do something extra, and maybe this is going into too much detail for a very retro game in an open world setting, but I completely agree. And I'd also argue beyond just fantasy, something like Assassin's Creed, where you're getting these historical context to every place. Some of those cities are very boring, don't get me wrong, but others I find very exciting, like especially with Black Flag, some of those Caribbean cities like Havana and things. Like I think they worked really well.
Yeah, that's very different, because that's kind of
Exactly.
historical as opposed to modern, and urban is very much a modern thing. So.
But I will back fantasy to the hilt, and I think
absolutely
that Zelda Breath of the Wild is right around the corner, so we will be talking about open world games very soon again.
Yeah,
but
MBZ,
that's all I had to play. How about yourself?
Good stuff. Well, I'm glad you played that, Bally, because it's a kind of different horizon for you, and interesting stuff to hear about. Me, I've been playing some games. I finished Castlevania Aria of Sorrow.
Very good.
Yay, round of applause. Well done, me.
More Castlevania.
It was the shortest Castlevania that I've beaten so far, and that might be to do with the fact that I've progressively gotten better at these games, and so I understand.
How many have you played now?
I've played 4.
Okay.
If we're talking about the Metroidvania ones, I've played 4. If we include the NES one, then 5.
Okay.
So,
which is obviously more linear and not.
Yes, it's level based.
Yeah.
So this one, everyone talked about this game as like the Castlevania. That if you want to play Metroidvania Castlevania games, then you go with Symphony of the Night, and then you play Aria of Sorrow. Those are the ones that people hold up. And I don't think this game is as good as Symphony of the Night. I think it's the best of the 3 GBA games, and obviously there are 3 more DS games I still have to play.
Oh boy!
So
are they on Virtual Console?
DS ones are not. No, all the GBA ones are. So if you want to play those, they're all there. But I don't think Konami put the DS ones on there. Maybe on Switch. We'll see. I guess I'm holding out hope for Konami to do anything with video games. Although
how we get DS games on Switch, we don't know yet, but they'll work out.
Well, I mean, Konami are actually releasing a launch game on Switch, so fuck
Bomberman?
me. Yeah, exactly. Super Bomberman are. So
that is weird.
Who knows what they're even doing anymore? No one, clearly. But back to the point. Aria of Sorrow. I felt like there was some stuff which was really cool, and I mentioned before how you have an MP bar as opposed to kind of a number with hearts next to it, which encourages switching up of your sub-weapons a lot more, and the sub-weapons are obviously influenced by the different monsters that you come across, so like the monster's particular weapon or their power will be infused into you, and you can use that as your sub-weapon.
Yeah.
And then kind of that includes abilities as well. So I like that twist to it, and it helped, but the thing I found was a lot of them seemed useless, and I crutched on 1 or 2 throughout the whole game. So despite having that variety and that wealth of options, I kind of stuck to what I knew and what I liked. So it may have kind of let me down in that sense. So that was a point that I thought was like, yeah, I like this system, but also I'm not really engaging with it that much. And maybe that's my own fault for not experimenting enough. But as it comes, the kind of notion of Castlevania is get through all these enemies as fast as you can. Not as fast as you can, but try and survive all these enemies and get to the next save room. It's kind of how that game feels. As opposed to Metroid, which feels more kind of designed around... Yeah, more platforming, more environmental, kind of, figuring stuff out. Not necessarily puzzles in Metroid, but orienting yourself and knowing where to go. Whereas in Castlevania, everything is very clearly signposted. Like, there is this door that needs to be opened with this particular thing, and you don't have it right now, so that's going to happen. And Metroid does that as well, but I just think it's more explicit.
There's elements of Metroid where it's a lot more hidden, and you're like, right, I didn't know you had to super missile that one thing. Okay, I've got
exactly.
You now. Yeah.
Like, upgrades are hidden behind walls that are completely invisible to you. Like, you have to powerbomb whole rooms to uncover things. And in Castlevania, you get to a place and you're like, well, this thing is too low, so I can't go through it. I wonder what I need to do. Oh, right, I need to get the slide so I can slide under this door, So it becomes a bit more overt. And so, back to the idea of not switching up the weapons is if I have something that works and I'm killing enemies and not taking much damage for it, then guess what? I'm just going to stick to that, Like, I'm just going to crutch on the thing that I want to use. So that kind of worked. I do think, like, if you're talking about a challenge level, it straddles the line much better between difficulty, where Circle of the Moon, really hard. Harmony of Dissonance, way too easy. This, right spot in the middle. There was some grinding I had to do. It wasn't as streamlined as Symphony of the Night. I think Symphony of the Night kind of ferries you places much more easily. And the one thing about that game, and I don't know what it is, maybe it's because I played it more, maybe it's just the environmental design, but Symphony of the Night has a very memorable castle. Like, all the rooms feel distinct and different, and the areas are named so, and the structure, when you look at the map of Symphony of the Night, you know it's Symphony of the Night, because there's that corridor that goes straight through the center of the castle, and there's a bit on the right where you're kind of going up and down the elevator shaft, and then you have the library that kind of links to that. Like, there are those areas that, when I look at the Symphony of the Night map, I know exactly where everything is. And this felt more detached than that. It felt like the places I was going to weren't as distinct. And I think a problem that Castlevania has come into as I've been playing all these games is they just reuse areas again and again. And it's been doing that
between
since...
games?
No, not like exact rooms and stuff like that, but theming-wise.
They mirror castles and stuff, I think you've described before.
Well, I mean, mirroring castles was in one game, it does that where... Well, in Symphony of the Night, you go into the upside-down version of that own castle, and then Harmony of Dissonance does a similar thing where you have a mirror version of the same castle. But what I mean is more along the lines of theming. So every Castlevania game will have a clock tower, and the clock tower will have all these cogs going around in circles, and they'll be rotating, so you have to jump on them but keep moving, and every clock tower has harpies in them, and guess what? This clock tower also has harpies in it. Like, there are enemies associated with areas, if you know what I mean. Like, so they all kind of amalgamate in my brain. So by the time I've gone through Symphony of the Night and Circle of the Moon and Harmony of Dissonance and Aria of Sorrow, it's kind of running thin, you know, and that's something...
Do the games merge together at all from that, or they still feel very distinct between games, but just within those games they start to copy each other a lot?
Yeah, they feel distinct from the perspective of mechanics and systems. So this one, obviously, you know, as I said, with the mana bar and everything, is very different from the other two games. And the art styles are different as well, but there's something about the GBA, when you get into a series, that series kind of stays looking the way it does, and you see that with Pokemon, you see that with Fire Emblem. Like, the sprites from Sacred Stones are basically the sprites from 7, which are basically the sprites from 6. Like, there is a lineage that continues, and to some degree I like that, because I love stuff on GBA, but yeah, it does start to meld a little bit more. So basically what I'm getting at is, I really like Aria of Sorrow. I think it's the best Castlevania that's not called Symphony of the Night, but it's not like as amazing as a lot of people said it was. And I think I was kind of built up to be like, okay, there's a step up here with this game. And there are great moments, like really fun bosses, a lot of stuff that you actually have a lot of challenge to deal with. But by the end, I was like, okay, you know, I kind of blasted through that. It was fun. I loved it. You know, I really enjoyed my time, but it's not kind of like that upper echelon that I was maybe hoping it would be. So maybe a little bit disappointment, but I still really liked playing through it. So... I'm not going to complain, Bally.
Sorry to keep everything around Switch, but there's no sort of Castlevania-style games, or I should say Metroidvania-style games that we know of coming to Switch yet.
No.
There? Okay. I mean, I'm intrigued to see what that system can do with
Bally. I'll be very surprised if Bloodstained doesn't come to Switch, though. You know,
that's true.
The game that was kickstarted. Yeah, so it got delayed to 2018, and there's no way a Wii U game is being released in 2018. So I imagine, just like what Yooka-Laylee did, it will move to Switch.
Cool.
And I hope that game does something a bit more bold, because, yeah, there's stuff in Symphony of the Night which is... like, I think the thing with Symphony of the Night is there are hidden layers to it. Like, there are fighting game combo spells, which I never knew about until I watched Vinny Caravella play through the game, and I was like, what the fuck? I played through this entire game and I never knew about this entire aspect of it.
And
like,
the game never tells you about them.
No, it never tells you about it, so you just have to fucking figure it out on your own.
I mean, is that like Shine Sparking? Maybe,
to some degree, although Shine Sparking is a bit more overt. Like, this is literally just mash fucking buttons until you find a combo that works. And it's like, some of those moves are broken as hell, and they're really fun to use, but yeah, maybe just, you know, some depth there. It's really hard to kind of justify this, but yeah, I enjoyed the game, so I'm going to leave it at that. You should, I'm going to say, like, if I recommend any Castlevania game that's currently available on Wii U Virtual Console, this is the one you should play. So, and I think, like, maybe going into it fresh, Bally, if you were to just play this one, I don't think you'd have the issues that I do as a result
just pick
of
it up on
maybe.
the Virtual Console on Wii U and give it a try. Yeah, so I'd be up for that.
Excellent. So, aside from that, Bally, I needed something else to listen to podcasts to while I was playing a video game.
Don't you dare.
So
I was literally about to ask.
So I picked
Go
up
on, so that everyone knows what we're joking about.
Yeah, your favorite game of all time, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze.
One of.
Yeah, so I'm playing DK Tropical Freeze
and
you
didn't listen to podcasts while playing it.
No, I did. Of course I did. Bally, it's a platformer.
Did you have the music on as well?
Yeah, of course I did. I always have it on in the background. It's still going. I need some audio cues. Audio is actually a big part of what I want to talk about with this game, Bally.
Excellent.
It's something that I kind of forgot from playing Returns, and maybe being on 3DS, it didn't have as much of an impact on me, but the sound design in this game is fucking awesome. And you know what I've railed so many times about how I love sound design. Metroid Fusion is one of my favorite games because of like every time you grab a ledge, there's a satisfying click to it, and when you engage the missile, it locks in, and the screw attack just sounds amazing, and the space jump has this kind of whooshy feel to it. Like, good sound design in games, if you do it well, I'm gonna pay attention. And so when I'm jumping on enemies and just bopping them, you just want to bop on them all in a row, Bally. You just want to bop them all because it just feels like there's this great sense of something hitting it's really hard to describe, but there's this great sense.
It's a very natural feeling that is setting off something in your brain that just feels very good. Like, it's very difficult to describe. And we've had this problem describing music before. Like, it's hard to eloquate sometimes.
But you know when sounds are good and when sounds are bad. You know,
exactly.
Something can really hurt your ears if it's like this high pitched thing, or if it's kind of fuzzy. But something that is kind of crisp and solid really makes an impact. And so those sounds aren't necessarily crisp and solid, but they are very they fit with the tone, they fit with the kind of jolly upbeat nature of the game, and I really enjoy that. Like, it's not just jumping on enemies, it's collecting items, like getting bananas, the kind of, you know, there's little sounds that kind of you pops into
very good
your
impression.
Yeah, I know. I try. I'm a great voice actor here. So all that stuff just comes together in a great way that I find very satisfying. So despite the fact that it's it has problems with, it's quite slow and fast at the same time. Tropical Freeze, like, you feel your main walking speed is really slow, but you have to run to kind of pick up momentum. It's a very momentum-based game, but that momentum, I think, is carried through when you're just jumping enemy to enemy. It really has a great feel to it.
Dixie Kong OP?
Dixie Kong is what makes this game easy. It actually is kind of ridiculous.
Easy or playable?
No, I think the game is playable. It's just incredibly difficult when you don't have that crutch to lean on. And so, I went through, I played a bit of Cranky, I used Diddy for a little bit, but it's just so obvious. Like, Dixie is by far the best secondary character in that game, and she just saves you so many times that you wouldn't even think about. Like, I think even just the normal jump gives you a bit of a higher jump than you would usually have, and then you dip down and up again, and it gives you that variability to where if you're jumping to a moving platform, you have a wiggle room, right? Like, it allows you to kind of judge, but also be like, oh, if I fudge it, I'm okay. Like, it kind of removes any fear. And so I think that's a lot of the problem with platforming generally, and why I have issues with Mario, is fear. You're afraid to make that jump because you don't know if you're going to nail it, and if you don't nail it, guess what? You're starting the level again. And with Dixie on your side, removing that fear allows you to act more naturally on instinct, and so as a result, you can make the jumps, and it's more of the fact of you knowing that you have the crutch rather than necessarily needing the crutch. Like, there are moments that I don't double jump in the level at all, I'm just normal jumping, but because I know I have the safety net of Dixie, it doesn't worry me. Which is very interesting. And
like when you do lose Dixie, or Diddy for that matter, and you're just platforming with DK by himself, you do feel very, very vulnerable and heavy, and like you're gonna just sink past that platform instantly. And I mean, if you just want to really play this game on hard mode, you just have to play as Donkey Kong, don't you? Like, it's really, really challenging in some parts.
It's not only that you are more incompetent platforming, you also have 2 less hits to take. So you become even more vulnerable, like, physically and just, from that perspective.
And what do you think of the water levels that they've added to this game that is sort of different to Returns?
I don't think I've played any water levels yet, Bally.
Okay.
So
and you're a couple of worlds in?
I should say I'm at the end of World 2. I beat the boss of World 2. So I haven't played a significant amount, but I've played enough to get the sense of why you love this game. And I'm going to tell you particularly why you love this game.
Okay, here we go.
Because as someone who played a little bit of this when I was round at yours, and I've seen a couple levels, and I've played the whole of Donkey Kong Country Returns. I'm like, why does Bally like this game so much? Like, this game is the same as Returns,
and
right?
I have played Returns as well, I should add.
Exactly, yeah. And I think that you're more down on that game. Not down, but like you don't praise it as highly.
Not down. I like it a lot, but you're right. Yep, I praise this one more highly.
Yeah, so obviously we know that the music is great in this game, although I'm not really listening to it that much because, Dan Riker was wrong. It's not the best music of 2014. The aesthetic of this game is on another level. And you, as someone who appreciates great art and theming and how a level kind of combines its playability with its look, this game is an echelon above a lot of other platformers. And it reminded me a lot of Yoshi's Woolly World, but where Yoshi's Woolly World kind of gets bogged down in some of the kind of slowness and some of the, it looks amazing and it has that great aesthetic to it, but this game has a pace, but also just assaults you with so many different aspects. And it really came to the forefront in the second world, where you're in this place with all these windmills and you're going through this country kind of landscape. But it's very distinctive from this jungle atmosphere.
Very autumnal almost. Is that the second world?
Yes, autumnal.
Yeah.
It is the second world. And so you see these pumpkins kind of scattered around. And then you get to an area where you're literally platforming on falling autumn leaves as they kind of move from the top to the bottom of the screen. And, at a base level, mechanically, you're just platforming on platforms that are disappearing. That's been in Mario, that's been in any other game. But the way they tie context into the platforming itself and the aesthetic of it is so satisfying. It's just you get the sense that developers really thought very hard about how we can make this world feel very much associated with kind of the tone that it's going for.
And I think stuff like that gets progressively better throughout the game, I think, actually. And you get far more sort of machinery and things like that and contraptions that you see in levels that parts of them fall apart that you're using to platform on, and then they have some other effect like wind or something. And you're right, mechanically this game is great, but not special, arguably. But when you're right, when you're combining it with the way that it treats theming into those mechanics, it just works really well. And like you said, the soundtrack on top of it, the sound design on top of it, there's a real special
There's a
quality
cohesion, right? Like
exactly.
it feels like a package in the way that, the first Donkey Kong Country Returns is a really good game, and it was a return, and it was like, I'm back. Donkey Kong is here are these mechanics. We've got added a partner character that works in kind of different way to how it worked on the Super Nintendo. And that felt like, okay, we're just getting our feet under us. And I know people criticize Retro for going back to Donkey Kong, but I think what they learnt and what they understood is they took that blueprint and they just fucking canvassed. They just painted a beautiful artistic piece over the top of what was already solid foundation, right? And so that is the real through line of why I know that you love this game so much, and it's working on me a great deal, despite the fact that, from a design standpoint, I'm just kind of jumping, killing enemies, and there are moving platforms and there are things that disappear, but the context given to those moving platforms and the things that disappear is what elevates it. And I want to pick out in particular in World 2 one of the levels, which is a minecart-based one, and I really love minecart stuff. I think that it's, it
changes the pace well.
It changes it, but it also is a different kind of style where you're thinking differently. You're just using one button to do a lot of actions.
It's a very different skill as well, yeah.
Yeah, but the level which essentially you're going through a theme park water ride and it changes. You're in the minecart and then you're suddenly in the water boat going down areas, and
like
then
a log flume.
Yeah, log flume. A log flume is what I'm looking for. So you're going through a log flume, like you're going under the water sometimes and jumping up over stuff. And then by the end of the level, this giant chainsaw starts rolling behind you, and you need to jump perfectly to hit the bits of wood that are flying in front of it to create the level in front of you. And it is just absolutely amazing. Like, it is an incredible level that really, I died a lot of times on it, but I was really enjoying it every time I went back to it. And And I didn't expect, I just thought I'd go into this game and it would just be some good levels, good platforming. This is why, that there is just so much care and attention to the animation and the art, and it's really good.
Cool.
So I'm only 2 worlds in, but that stuff is really stuck out.
I'm super glad you're enjoying it so far. And you sound so positive from just the first 2 worlds, and I actually think that the sort of next 6 worlds are far better than the first 2 worlds. So I definitely look forward to what you have to say about the rest of the game.
Let me end with the negative, because I just want to emphasize this, and it pissed me off about Returns, and it's still bad. This boss design fucking sucks. Yeah. Retro, get your shit together, because I do not want to have to go through 2 stages of this owl that I can sleep through and get to the last one and fucking die instantly, know?
Like, some of the bosses get a lot harder.
It is punishing in a very frustrating way. I am fine with you making these bosses difficult, but make them difficult in a way that doesn't rely on waiting and waiting for animation cycles to happen, for just this one window of opportunity that I have to kill this boss. It is bad boss design, and I like that you have to learn patterns, but to some degree that goes over the top. There is a point at which you can stop learning a pattern, and this is no, we're just gonna get you to learn again and again. And that boss took me a long time, and it wasn't necessarily fulfilling when I beat him, because I was I basically had to get so good at this boss that I didn't take a single hit. And that's not really something that you should have to do, It's just not right. So
it's not good. And as hard as this game is, I think a lot of the bosses, especially later in the game, are a tier above how hard the rest of the game is at points. It really does feel like you have to become like a platforming god for a few minutes just to clear some of those guys.
It's just unfair in the aspect that you don't know what's coming next, and so they can just throw some shit at you, and you're like, well, what? Well, now I have to go through again what I've already done, and then I'll finally get back to where I was, and now I have to pay attention again, and it's a real disconnect, because I'm kind of sleeping through the first 2 stages, and I get to the third one, I'm like, okay, I need to wake myself up out of having slept through those first 2 phases. Now I have to pay attention, and it's just bad pacing, if you're going against a boss, you need to continually run against it and learn it as you go. Kills the momentum. Really does.
It's annoying.
As aesthetically pleasing as those bosses are, and as great as those stages look, it's unforgivable.
Some of the boss theme music is glorious, but cool.
So there we go. That's Tropical Freeze. I'll continue to move on with that, and I think that pretty much wraps us up, Bally. Let's take a break here, and we'll be back after it with some discussion of the Nintendo Switch and some of your emails. So don't go anywhere. We shall return. Alright everyone, and welcome back to the next half of the show, where Valley and I are going to talk about all the things about Switch that we got to discuss, because there's lots to break down still, there's lots of stuff that's come out since the event, and obviously that last show was kind of a direct reaction, a very visceral,
we
just
tired.
Watched this thing. Yes, we were knackered. It was an ordeal, one might say, to kind of just knock all that out, but we're fully rested now. We're ready to kind of give a more of a critical edge think about things a bit more. And there's also some interesting Fire Emblem news that came out because there was a direct that happened recently. So we'll touch on that. We'll touch on other Switch stuff, and we have some of your emails to bring in as well. So, Bally, I think we're going to kick off with some email stuff so that we can, have a jumping off point for some discussion. So how about you go ahead and read out what we have?
Our first email is from Terence, who says, "Hi guys, it's Terence from the internet, and I've got some issues with the Switch. Number one, the price is too high, $300. That doesn't include the ridiculous prices for extra Joy-Cons or another dock is terrible when both the PS4 and Xbox One are cheaper and offer 20 times the amount of games on stronger consoles." So I think Terence has a number of points. We might as well tackle them one by one and have a little discussion about them. So, price, MBZ.
This is very difficult because ultimately Nintendo are not competing in a vacuum. And we've talked in the past about how they like to say they don't compete with Sony and Microsoft, but by having a video game console in 2017, you are going to be compared to them no matter what you do. And so it's just a reality of being in the business. Not to mention the fact that when you go after third parties, like, you're going after games that already exist on those consoles. So by outrightly denying that you're competing with them, you have those third-party games, like, you want them as well. So it's kind of like a catch-22 in terms of their messaging, and I think over the years Nintendo have tried to message it that way. And the real problem is that this is a new piece of kit coming out in the market, and the PS4 and Xbox One are already 3 years old, which means, of course, they've had time to build up strong game libraries because they've just been around for longer. And of course they're cheaper because they've had the time for manufacturing costs to go down so the prices can be cut. And of course you're going to be able to pick one up and have a broader range of games, a wider library, a wider selection. But the kicker is most people already own one of those devices anyway. And so if you own one of those devices, when I look at it from the perspective of, hey, the Xbox and the PlayStation are basically the same console. And there's been very weak first-party support on Sony's side. Microsoft are falling off a cliff. Scalebound just got cancelled. Had that Phantom Dust thing that was gone away. Like, loads of things that Microsoft have done are falling away. So, ultimately, those two boxes are the same box. And I think the reason that Nintendo have a chance still, despite the price being relatively high, is that, number one, they offer the differential. And the differential is the portability. And number two is they have games that you can't get anywhere else, and they will have support of those games continually because all their studios, hopefully, and we can talk about this later with 3DS stuff, but hopefully all their studios are focused on Switch now, which means you're getting... Nintendo have the biggest output of first-party software in the industry. So when we're talking about exclusives, they're always going to be number one. So I agree that, yes, it looks bad when you take the competition into mind, but there are factors at play here which allow Nintendo to potentially do okay despite that price being high. Do you think, Bally, that the price is going to go down relatively soon? Do you think that they're going to find that people aren't going to want to pick it up day one because it's so high as a kind of secondary piece of hardware? Or is 300 okay? Because I have a feeling that while the Switch is going to sell out, straight away because obviously the pre-orders are limited and everything, that it may be a bit of a slower ramp up in the vein of a 3DS or a DS, where like over time it'll get cheaper and more software will be pushed out and people will slowly start to gravitate towards the platform.
Yeah, I think everyone always talks about what's the right price, and then when the price is launched, half of the people go, "Oh, it's too much," half another half go, "Oh, it's too cheap." Ultimately, you only find out what the right price is once you find out how many people are buying that system. Like, if this thing sells like absolute hotcakes, and everyone can sit back and be like, maybe Nintendo really did get the price right. And if it sells really poorly, people can maybe start to assume that maybe the price was too high. So I think the answer is that if it is very poor at launch and it needs to have a stronger launch than the Wii U, and I'm confident it will, even with some of the negativity coming from the Japanese event. I think that it's going to be a stronger launch, and I think it will sell pretty well, but we won't know if the price is right until we see how it sells. And sort of Terence talks about if you compare it to games on stronger consoles. I don't think any console that launches is a strong console. To make a console strong, it takes a long library of games, and it takes proof that console has sold well. I think it's impossible to just come out the blocks and be a strong console necessarily, because it's not It's not perfection. It's not just right. We do this, we do this, we do that, and all of a sudden it'll sell really well. Like no one really predicted the Wii to sell as well as it did. Even though now you could argue it's a strong console because it sold really well. Great, but
I think what he means by strong console is the power argument, though. And
power. Okay, that's a whole other discussion.
It is a whole other discussion.
But I think there's a lot of we need to wait and see what this can do, and we'll get more into launch lineup and stuff like that in further points to be made. But I think the price, you just have to wait and see.
Ultimately, price is relative because every consumer is different and everyone places different values on different amounts of money.
And
so
it's really frustrating listening to video game journalists and other podcasters, and even us, don't listen to us whether we're going to pick this up day one or not. We're the worst people to ask. And
yeah, exactly.
I hear so many people on loads of video game podcasts I listen to, and they go, I might wait until this game to pick this up, and I might wait. It's like, no, you shouldn't. If you're doing your job properly, you should buy it day one and talk about the games that come out on it. And it's and many of them do that. And for that reason, you shouldn't judge when they buy it on how good the launch lineup is or how good the console is. People in our positions, large Nintendo fans, have a Nintendo podcast. We're obviously going to pick it up day one. So I think that there needs to be a far better distinction, especially online from what I've seen, of people talking about the price in relation to their own personal view on getting it or not, and the price on how well it can do in the market.
Yeah, I am not sure whether I would get this system if I wasn't doing this podcast, because ultimately you can play Zelda on Wii U, and yes, it looks worse and it runs seemingly a bit chunkier. I hope that the Wii U version of Zelda actually runs okay by the time it finally comes out, because generally Nintendo don't put out products that have chunky frame rates ever. They usually have very good quality control when it comes to that stuff, and so I actually have faith that the Wii U offering is going to be a good version. So ultimately, if you don't want to play Zelda on a brand new spanking system and you have a Wii U, there's really no reason to get this right now. And there will be better reasons down the line, and software is coming, and by the holiday I think it'll probably be a stronger proposition. And by then they'll probably have bundles and everything. I think maybe that's another thing we could mention is $300 without a pack-in is another kind of punch to the gut for some people, because the last two Nintendo consoles have both come with games, software that shows off the potential of the system, what it does, and you have a game in 1-2 Switch which is ridiculously overpriced for what it seems like it is, and also seems like an out-of-the-box perfect party game that you can take to other people's houses and show off what the Switch does and some of the features that it has. And it's a tough one because on the one hand, you see Nintendo leaning more into the casual nature of things and going back to motion controls, but then they're also kind of giving you this message that this system is just about portability for traditional video games. And so Nintendo, maybe from the perspective of not wanting to proposition this whole system as a gimmick thing, decided to not include 1-2 Switch, because if you include that as the pack-in, it maybe gives the impression that this entire console is going to give you experiences like that. So maybe it's a smart move in not packing it in from that perspective to kind of dissuade public opinion away, but it also looks weak that they're not including anything with the box itself.
Well, on that point, we should go on to Terrence's point number 2.
Okay.
Which is that with 7 weeks to go, they still haven't sold the gimmick well enough for a general gamer. What is the Switch, a handheld or a home console? And trying to be both is really neither. Since all the power is in the tablet, it isn't really a home console, and because the tablet has no support home play, its battery life isn't good enough to be a handheld. Jack of all trades, master of none. So, yeah, there's kind of links back to the marketing on the gimmicks, and which is the gimmick? Is it the handheld or is it the Joy-Cons? I mean, I certainly think that it's all about the home console on the go or handheld in your home. I can't decide which one I side with more between those two, but I think it is kind of harsh of Terrence to sort of take this jack of all trades, master of none approach, because I know that Nintendo, if they'd made it only home console and were still less powerful than the other home consoles, that they would get absolutely lambasted for not going with their strong market, which is mobile.
It would
games.
Be pointless in competing at that point, right? Like,
exactly.
Just exactly what we've just said is, and I know people like to say, well, if Nintendo had a console that could play all third-party games and Nintendo games, that's the only place people would go. But I don't think that's true, in the sense that people are built into, and I think I talked about this last episode, but people are built into ecosystems with PSN and with Xbox Live, and you think about the infrastructure of how important online is these days and how many light years ahead the competition are of Nintendo. That's a huge factor to take into account. Like, there's a vibrant scene for Call of Duty on PlayStation 4. That's not going to be the case on a Nintendo platform. And not only that, but, you know, just completely on a power level, they've tried it before with GameCube and it didn't work. And I just don't see a situation in which it makes any sense for them to do that. The Switch is less powerful because it is cramping everything down into this very small handheld format. And it's interesting because I saw two threads on NeoGAF today. One which was basically saying, is the jump from Wii U to Switch kind of a smaller jump as GameCube was to Wii? And the other one is the jump from 3DS to Switch the biggest, like, power jump we've ever seen in a portable? So there's kind of the glass half empty, glass half full perspective on this, which is, this is, as a successor to Wii U, maybe a little underwhelming, but as a successor to the 3DS, holy shit, is it fucking incredible, you know? So it's looking at it from both perspectives. It comes down to what you prefer to do, if you're more of a home console or handheld person. And as a handheld person, this looks incredible to me. You know, this is absolutely something that I'm very interested in. So,
and I think that when Terrence talks about haven't sold us on the gimmick, I think that first trailer, if you ignore the Japan conference, which did confuse issues that we can get into in a minute, I do believe that first trailer sold the gimmick well, and that is, essentially home console gaming on the go. And I think that just worked so well. You see the guy get up from the sofa with Zelda to take out the dog for a walk, playing Zelda on the go, and you're immediately like, wow, that is great. That is the gimmick. This is what I want the system for. And I think even through all the negativity that came from the Japanese conference, I think that is still the key message, and was probably the core message that people took away from stuff like the Switch appearing on Fallon and things. Like, I don't think that inroads have been made with the whole motion control stuff to the point where people are confused and don't understand that the core point is switching between home and on the go.
Ultimately, I just feel like Nintendo kind of shot themselves in the foot by focusing so hard on Joy-Con features and 1-2 Switch and ARMS for the first half of that conference. When you think about it, those two games, ARMS and 1-2 Switch, and the thing is, with ARMS, you can play it with normal controls anyway, because of the idea that if you take it on the go and you just have it on that screen, you have to have normal controls to play it. You can't just be in an airplane fucking throwing your hands about, you know? So
that's why you detach the Joy-Cons, Emblem, and you can play it as you wish.
But then
it gives you that option,
the person in the seat next to you. So,
yeah, just punch them. Why not?
Yeah. Well, and I think someone else has brought up the point that the only two games that 100% require the use of motion and Joy-Cons is Just Dance 2017 and 1-2 Switch. And in a lineup of games that features a lot of stuff that is just traditional video games, that is a tiny percentage, and yet they focus so hard on it, which really confused what people thought would be a simple message.
It's really weird. It's like there was this huge market exposed by the Wii, and they just could not resist dipping back into that market, or attempting to dip back into that market. It was that first reveal of the Switch with the 3-minute trailer, with, like we just discussed, with him going for the walk with his dog with Zelda. Like, that was so far from motion controls that it was just so weird to see them hammering on with motion controls so much. And I don't know, I can see why they did it, and I'm only scared that there are features that they spent money on in the Switch that no one will make games for in a couple of years' time when we're talking about HD Rumble and all these things. Like I'm concerned that 1-2 Switch and ARMS, for example, and maybe, who knows, just Dance, they become the only 3 games that ever use this extra functionality that has resulted in the system costing a bit more to produce. And that'd be a real shame if in the long run that harms Nintendo in some way, and that the final product price is higher as a result. And I think that it's really interesting to see if stuff like 1-2 Switch, as much as it's been branded badly, advertised badly, I should say, and that it's not bundled, and that it is on its own, and that it is over expensive, just to see if people do actually pick up that game and actually think, you know what, this is actually really cool, but I am only happy with it for perhaps half an hour versus a few hours or more than a few hours with something like Wii Sports. So I am intrigued to see how that game does and what people say about it.
I think that Nintendo not including it as a bundled game has to some degree killed the virality or potential virality of it, because ultimately the people who first bought Wiis were hardcore gamers who took them home for Christmas, who had grandma play Wii Sports and fell in love with it, and then they wanted one, you know? And if hardcore gamer goes back for Christmas and is just sitting on his own playing Zelda because he didn't want to pay for 1-2 Switch, then guess what? No one's going to know that 1-2 Switch exists, and no one's going to care about it. So they really gimped themselves by not doing that. Like, it seems so obvious that they could, like, throw this out there and make it seem like something that potential, you know, casual consumers would want to pick up the system for, but now they don't have that option.
It's really confusing on top of that by the fact that they to call it a skew is maybe an overstatement. They have 2 different colors. They've got the grey,
right,
and they've got the blue and the pink, red, whatever you want to call it. Neon reddish pink. And essentially 1-2 Switch is branded on this blue and red, and then they release a system that is blue and red, and then the two don't come together. And apparently even in game at 1-2 Switch, they talk about the blue player and the red player in these 2-player games. You know,
really?
That's what Jose Otero was mentioning on Nintendo Voice Chat. I don't know if you remember. So he was suggesting that in game it tells you, oh, the blue player does this and the red player does that, and so with each Joy-Con, and to then have a system of those colors, and you think, why not bundle it in some way? Just do 2 SKUs. One's the gray one that doesn't come with 1-2 Switch, and one's the color one that does. I don't know. Like, it was just really. I mean, I am really intrigued by this game, and I do want to pick it up in 2017, but I'm not going to pick it up on launch. I'd rather pick it up on the cheap, and it's a bit of a shame because I think that game does a lot of cool things and ultimately oozes Nintendo in all the great ways that Wii Sports oozed Nintendo and Wii.
It's very difficult to see a casual consumer base flocking to this system for motion gaming. I think we mentioned last podcast, those people don't find motion gaming a new weird thing anymore. They've done it. They know it's technology that exists, and they've all played Wii Sports. And so the barrier to entry with the system not only being $300, with 1-2 Switch not being a pack-in game, with the fact that it looks more complicated and uninviting than the Wii did, I just don't understand why this game was made for this system, and what, because it's really tough. Like, they want to straddle a line, but every other aspect of the system is screaming in the opposite direction. Like, no, it's $300 and it seems more complicated, and they've put all this technology into it that is supposedly cool, but is that technology going to be used outside of this thing? Like, it's a very confused message that could have just been so simple for them to be like, okay, let's not include all these features in the Joy-Cons. Let's cut the price down to as much as possible so that this can be a games machine for games. And then you get step back and you're like, well, that's not very Nintendo, is it? And you're like, well, do they need to not be very Nintendo at this point? Like, it's been 2 generations where they've been the most fucking Nintendo they could possibly be. And on one hand, it's done them very well. The other, it's been a complete failure. So it's really hard to call, you know? Like, I love that Nintendo are different and they absolutely go out there and they have these strange technologies like HD Rumble, which hike the price up, but which may prove potentially crazy and weird. Like, I haven't heard anyone talk about it, but the potential for HD Rumble in VR is actually astonishing, you know? Like, that idea of picking up an object and rattling it around, having that sensation that you're in that physical space seems like a really cool thing. And so this technology seems like it could be applicable in certain areas, but on the other hand, it's like, well, it's just jacking up the cost of a system for what, a minigame collection that doesn't even come with it, that most people aren't going to play? Like, it's just a bit of a mess. And ultimately, that's just what that presentation was. It was just a bit of a mess. So
shall we move on to Terrence's final point?
Let's do that.
Final point here, Nintendo is putting a lot of faith in Zelda. According to some reports, the Switch needs to sell 2 million units in 2 weeks to match the investment they put into it. As great as Zelda is, and it better be magnificent, it doesn't have the earning power of a Mario or Pokemon, and that could burn Nintendo. And then finally, he rounds up and says, alright, this is long enough, and it doesn't include online functionality, which seems poor compared to PS Plus and Xbox Live, but I digress. This seems negative, but Nintendo has burned us with the Wii U and the GameCube, so I won't buy it at launch, but I'm hoping the Switch doesn't disappoint. Thanks for taking my question and the great podcast.
All right.
Is Zelda enough?
Well, first, he says it needs to sell 2 million in 2 weeks. It's going to sell 2 million. Like, they've sold out of pre-orders already. Their initial shipment is 2 million. No one can buy one right now. So, of course, they're going to sell out. Like, that's obvious. It's the Wii U sold out straight away. Like, that's not a worry. You shouldn't be worried about that because it's going to happen. Zelda is very weird. This game especially, because it feels like this Zelda has an incredible amount of eyeballs on it in the sense that no other Zelda game has had before. There is something about nostalgia and the idea that there are a lot of people who love Zelda as a franchise and who have kind of played it over the years, but infrequently. Maybe they played Ocarina when they were younger, and I think that that's a big flashpoint for people, is like a lot of older people who maybe had an N64 and played Ocarina of Time are looking at this game and are having those nostalgic memories flood back to them and are thinking like, wow, look how much Zelda has grown and evolved at this point, and look at this adventure that, to be honest, is comparable to big AAA Western titles, you know? Like, the thing that sells the most in the, you know, PS4 and the Xbox One libraries are these huge games that are, you know, have big budget behind them and look expansive and have 100 hours to invest into them, all that stuff. Like, it feels like they are putting this on a pedestal in a way that no other Nintendo game has been put on a pedestal before. And it may not have as broad a reach as something like Pokemon or Mario, but to be honest, it feels like a brand new game as opposed to just another Zelda. So that's something that I think is being pushed very hard. And like, you have the addition of voice acting, which is something that has kind of held the series back maybe in being, you know, taken up by that mainstream audience. And everything, just that trailer is I'm going to say this definitively, that is the best video game trailer I have seen in my life. I've watched it over 50 times. I love watching people react to it. It is absolutely astonishing. It still sends fucking shivers down my spine. It is incredible, and the way that they have marketed this game so far, it looks like it's set up to just soar, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I think that it's very easy to say, oh, Mario and Pokemon sell really well. Zelda traditionally hasn't sold as well, therefore this one will match the same. You know, before Fire Emblem Awakening, Fire Emblem didn't sell very well. Now look at Fire Emblem. We're getting Fire Emblem's the new Pokemon, like you said, Emblem, in your tweet.
Fire Emblem is basically Nintendo's third biggest franchise at this point.
Exactly. And I don't think there's anything in the way of this Zelda game to stop it doing something that you could compare to a Fire Emblem, a Mario, or a Pokemon. I think that it is creating that hype. It's ticking all those AAA tier boxes that you were just talking about open world sort of stunning vistas, etc., and characters and voice acting and all these things, combined with the fact that it's the name recognition of Zelda, which is
right. It's
arguably...
as a franchise, despite Zelda games maybe not selling the best. Like Skyward Sword sold pretty poorly, considering 100 million Wiis were sold.
Exactly.
There's a franchise recognition there that is like burned into the soul of video games.
It's just huge, and I think that combined with the launch of a new Nintendo system, and not just any Nintendo system, a Nintendo system where Nintendo's backs are to the wall, and the Wii U was not good. It did not sell well, and people are looking at how the system is going to do, and they want to find out what the best game on launch is going to be, and it's obviously going to be Zelda Breath of the Wild, and I think that it will do really well as a result. I don't see how people want to play it. Even if people just buy a Switch for this game and don't touch their Switch again for 3 years, this is still going to sell really, really well. I'm convinced.
Yeah, I'm very excited to play it, and I think just the sentiment that I've seen going around is this is the reason to buy this system. The question is, how many people think that that's a good enough reason to buy the system on day one? And I'm sure there's a decent amount of people, but it's definitely going to be one of the staples in the lineup. Like when you point to, hey, what does Nintendo Switch have to offer? That's there as a core pillar.
And I am convinced it will gain a bundle of Game of the Year 2017s.
We'll see. There's a lot of competition. Persona 5 is coming out this year, and I think you should not underestimate the threat of Persona 5, because people are going to fucking love that game, and it's gonna be tough. You know, there's lots of big games coming out. Horizon is literally coming out 2 days before Zelda in the UK. Like, it's like Wednesday for Horizon, Friday Zelda. These games that look very similar in many aspects. I'm sure they're very different games, but like, you know, there are competitors lining up. But I do hope that Zelda does well. Not to mention Mario, which is fucking Nintendo versus itself. So that's a big thing. He mentioned online as a part of his email. Maybe let's kind of break down some of that stuff quickly, because it was not explicitly made clear at the end of the presentation last time. So let's talk about these free NES and Super Nintendo games and the nonsense that has been going on, and it sounds like a bit of a mess when you compare it to the competitors. So Nintendo have said that you will get a free either NES or Super Nintendo game every month with the Switch subscription, the online paid thing that you have to invest in now.
Is that to download and keep, or to play for that month?
Well, Bally, let me tell you what. It's a library. You're loaning. Yeah, you ain't keeping, my buddy. So you are going to have to give that game back, or if you want to buy it at the end of that month. But the caveat is that the Super Nintendo games, I think, are going to have some sort of online play implemented into them. So there's a positive spin on this, there's a negative spin on this. Obviously, Nintendo tried to spin it as positively as they can, despite the fact that when you compare that to Xbox and PlayStation's offerings, it seems utterly fucking ridiculous. I think Jim Sterling did a video on this where he's talking about like the fact that they're literally just giving us a ROM, and he's talked a lot in the past about how he thinks Nintendo's handling a virtual console has just been asinine and terrible. But the thing with this that could potentially make it cool is, if you have everyone cluster around one game for that single month, you can make an event out of it, and you can kind of have supplementary materials that goes along with it. Like, think maybe, putting out Iwata Ask style things, like interviews with original developers, like maybe having video content that ties in with it, making it, celebrating the game in that way, and having everyone play it, having, the Miiverse equivalent, whatever that so happens to be, like have a lot of activity surrounding that game. Not to mention, if it's online enabled, then you're not going to have trouble just jumping in and getting a game, because everyone will have access to it at that time. So from that perspective, I can see there are cool things that they could do here, but for me, the negatives just outweigh the positives so much. As someone who has a large amount of games to play and has a backlog, I do not want to be time-locked to playing a game. I don't want to be like, Nintendo is dictating the point in time at which I'm allowed to play this video game. Like, here comes Mega Man 4. We're going to put out Mega Man 4. Does everyone want to play it? I'm like, well, no, I've got like 6 other games I want to play right now. I want to play Mega Man 4, but I don't want to play it this month, Like, it feels like they're trying to inject their own agenda into my own play habits, and that is not something I want, Bally. How do you feel about this? Like, is this something that you think would be a benefit to you, or is it too little? Because ultimately, Nintendo have sold us these games multiple times, and despite the fact that online play might be cool, it's one game, and it is one old game.
I mean,
and when PlayStation Plus is offering, sometimes PlayStation Plus, like with Rocket League, gives you an independent game that has just come out, like is brand fucking new. It just kind of pales in comparison.
Yeah, I don't think it's great, and you're right, many Nintendo fans have bought the same NES and Super Nintendo games again and again through the generations, and it's just crazy, especially when you lob in the fact of stuff like the NES Classic, where you're getting all of those games all under one roof for a really cheap deal, and all of a sudden you're having to awkwardly pay. You're getting it monthly, you were saying, and like it's just they're too overly precious over NES and Super Nintendo games to be specific. I think it's just crazy. They should just lob them at the Switch for free. Maybe not for free, but just they need to be really cheap. They put way too high a value on these classic games, and people ultimately, I think, at this stage value retro N64 games, Wii games, GameCube games far higher than anything NES or Super Nintendo related, and they just need to let go a bit and accept that the model they used for the NES Classic is fair, because NES games are very old. A lot of them aren't very good, and a lot of them are very, very hard and not much fun to play, and ultimately they're not a good sell at this point in time, and they just need to stop being so precious with them.
Yeah, fair. It's I don't know what they would do to make something that is more appetizing, because ultimately Nintendo don't have enough third-party offerings to give us free stuff all the time. And PlayStation has struggled to offer appealing PlayStation Plus stuff, and I think a lot of that was to do with the fact that PS4 had to kind of build up a library before they could start giving stuff away. Whereas PS3 was kind of positioned to do that from the beginning.
Nintendo know that an online person called Ballyman91 exists, and he owns XYZ of games downloaded. Well, let's go with downloaded. Nintendo also know that Ballyman91 has played a number of games on discs, but ultimately Nintendo knows that Ballyman91 has played lots of downloaded games on both his 3DS and his Wii U, and even his new 3DS, and they know that and have that information, but aren't willing to just give me a code that can get all those games, even for like, I don't know, say 10, 20, 30 quid I'd even be willing to pay to get like all of those games onto my brand new Nintendo Switch. And these are games that came out in the 80s and the 90s and the noughties, and like, it's not a big deal. Just let me have those games.
I think we need to wait on that, because they have said, and Reggie has hinted in interviews that there is going to be some process for bringing stuff forward.
That, but so put it at launch. That's it's the first thing that everyone does when they buy a new system is transfer.
It might be at launch, Bal. We're still like a month and a half out, so there is potential for that stuff to
announce it in
out.
Japan. Why wait?
Yeah, I know, and I don't know what their strategy is right now. It seems like they didn't announce very much and are going to continue to kind of roll out smaller announcements, like in the form of this Fire Emblem Direct, which announced, hey, there's a Fire Emblem Switch game coming, like just there. It's like, why didn't you maybe say that in the presentation? It just seems like they're kind of fracturing things out in a weird way. But, so let's talk more about this online stuff real quick. Is voice chat, matchmaking, friend adding, all this shit is going to be done through a mobile app. So basically, you can't access any of this stuff in your system. Like, you can't decide to add friends and do matchmaking on your system. This is unfathomable in a way that is just kind of ridiculous, don't you think? It just, I try to think of it from their perspective of like, if you're on the go and you want to do all this stuff, you can do it through your phone. It's much easier, and from that perspective, it's like, well, when I'm on the go, I'm not going to have internet anyway. So I'm not going to be playing online against anyone, am I? Like, I thought about it. I'm like, well, wait, this doesn't make any fucking sense. So there is some potential that it works, and I can imagine scenarios where you're at work and you want to play Mario Kart against a friend when you get home. So you just pop onto your phone before you get home. You're like, hey, do you want to do this? You know, and you set up the lobby before you're even there, and then you just jump online and it's sorted, which to some degree is actually a smart thing to do because everyone has their phone all the time, and it's kind of an easy access point through which to, you know, talk to everyone. But just putting it all on the phone and not even having the option to do it on the system is weird. And I keep saying this, but also I have the understanding that I have never used a voice chat system in a console before, and I don't think I ever will, because ultimately I just use Skype and Discord and other services on my computer, which are million miles better than anything any console provider has to offer me. So, in the end, does it fucking matter? No, but it's another thing to rag on Nintendo about, so, you know, that's what people do.
I think that you're right. It's crazy that functionality isn't on the Switch itself, but the idea that Nintendo release an app on your phone and then that you can use data through your phone that they don't even have to worry about because that's a phone contract, nothing to do with their internal workings, is a cool idea where you are out on the go. And when you're out on the go and you do have data, you are connected online, and that's something that a Switch can't do, that obviously phones can do, and that's the benefit. But there's no defending the inability of the Switch itself to have that app on it in some way and connect and etc. So yeah, when you're at home and you have internet, you don't want to be on your phone to organize something where your Switch is just in front of you ready to go. It's a bit crazy.
It is. But, you know, like, we played Triforce Heroes. What did we do? I texted you, hey, Bally, you want to play? You're like, yeah. Then we hopped on Skype and played. Like,
exactly.
I don't need this shit. I don't give a fuck about this shit. But it is 2017, and there are people who do care. So I think that they should at least get it in some kind of working order. Although I disagree that people should care. Why are you not just using Skype or Discord? You people are insane. Anyway, just quickly, the last thing on the online thing, which has come out recently, is that apparently you are going to be able to have multiple accounts on the Switch, and through these multiple accounts, you can say what region you're from. And if you set an account with, say, a Japanese region or a US region, you get access to that eShop. So truly, Bally, we now have full region free. I did not expect that to be the case at all, but I'm really happy because that means that I don't even have to fucking spend charges to import stuff from America. I can just log onto my US account on Switch and just fucking download it. It's amazing. You know, like that is exactly what you can do on PlayStation with PSN, and maybe it'll be a similar thing where I don't think you can necessarily use a credit card directly on the store. You might have to like buy a points value and then input a code or whatever, but they're giving you the option to do that, and that is huge. That is a real big deal. So there are a lot of negatives to this online stuff, but this is a real silver lining. I'm very happy about it, Bally.
Yeah, definitely. I think the fact that the online stores are going to be between regions is great. I mean, for me, it's the hard, when you're abroad and you can get a hard copy of a game. Like I used to absolutely love going to the States and picking up Game Boy Advance and DS games and putting them straight in my DS, GBA, whatever, and just playing them. And that was something I missed a lot after those systems, and it's so cool that that's going to be back for the Switch, where I know that I'm going to the States later this year, and I'm hopefully going to try and pick up a cheap version of something like 1-2 Switch, and that's just really satisfying that I can bring my Switch with me and play it straight away.
This is how you cheat the UK economy, Balance.
Cheat the UK economy.
Go across.
We're escaping Brexit.
Exactly. It's the only way. It's the only way to win. Okay, well, we have another email, Bally, so how about we address that?
It is from Fizz, who we had on the show a little while ago, who says, hey boys, let me tell you about the Switch. Firstly, the Switch launch is the most Nintendo-ass launch of all time. There was so much promise and excitement that built up for the event, and then it just fell flat. I don't want to overly bash this thing because I actually already pre-ordered Switch and Zelda, and it paid off. But man, this launch was weak. They've spaced out all their big titles across the rest of the year, Zelda at launch, Splatoon 2 in summer, and Mario at holiday, which seems like a fine, smart approach. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to work out that way. These are 3 big titles, but they are also 3 totally different genres with different player bases. The problem I see with the Switch is that it will have a hard time to keep momentum all the way to holiday 2017 with what seems to be a slim lineup. I don't think we were promised a machine that would cater more to third parties, but most certainly we were led to believe that. Sadly, this isn't reflected in any of the news that has come out. Instead, we got Wacky Punchers and Switch Sports, both full priced. I bet you there is a holiday bundle with Mario to try and boost the sales of the system that I predict after launch will take a bigger hit than they think, and maybe a Mario bundle can get people back on board with a strong holiday or 2018 Q1 lineup. I love the idea of the Switch and hope it does well. Like I said, I'm getting one, but this launch, like many others, has just been Nintendo not being able to get out of their own way. It will be a good Nintendo system for Nintendo fans, akin to what the Wii U is. Your palski, Big Fizz Daddy.
Well, yes, I think that there is much concern to be had for the lineup. I think a lot of people have talked about the problems, and that it seems like they are spacing things out, and there are big titles. But is it enough, Bally? Do you think that people will be drowning for not drowning? I'd say starving, should I say, for lack of content, or is this a better lineup than we're giving it credit for? I don't know, because a lot of people have said, like, yeah, there are gaps here, but I don't know that. I don't know. What do you think? I
think this lineup is pretty stellar, to be honest, and
stellar. I do disagree. Stellar is a real.
I won't go with stellar. I'll say really good, and I'm thinking about. We already, Fizz mentioned Zelda.
Let's say this is from a Bally perspective as well.
That's true. I'm not saying I represent all Nintendo fans. Fizz did mention he didn't sort of see. He sort of felt that Mario, Zelda, and Splatoon aimed at different audiences. I would sort of disagree and say that there are quite a lot of Nintendo fans out there who would pick up all 3 gladly. And
yeah, Nintendo fans though, Bal, that's the thing. Nintendo fans are 13 million, maybe a push. You know, that's the people who bought Wii U. And so if we're talking about like getting real traction in the first year, which to be honest, I think it's overrated getting real traction in the first year when you look at 3DS and DS and how really definitely. They didn't gain any momentum until their second or third years. But yeah, when you look at it from that perspective, Nintendo fans love these games. Do other people? I don't know.
I think it's lined up well, honestly. And what I mean by that is 2017 Zelda launch, Splatoon, big multiplayer, Splatoon 2, big multiplayer thing online in summer. Great. It's that summer Mario Kart Splatoon slot. Fantastic. There's even Mario Kart on top of that coming with extra battle mode. I'm not saying it's something I'm intrigued about and that it's something that will appeal to people who already own Mario Kart 8, but obviously we know that not everyone bought a Wii U. Hardly anyone did. So new buyers who have bought a Switch without owning a Wii U will probably jump on Mario Kart pretty quick. Later in the year, Super Mario Odyssey is looking like potentially the best Mario game of all time. It's just looking incredibly fresh and innovative.
Let's wait and see on that. We'll see.
I said potential. I'm not saying it is. I'm saying it. Yeah. If you want an initial trailer of a 3D Mario, it's absolutely hitting it out the park.
Totally. Yeah.
And I think that don't put anything past Nintendo to have already. So I'm saying we shouldn't already expect Nintendo to have impressed us for 2018. I think you save that slot for E3. I think their job in the last little while has been to tell us what's coming out in 2017 and trying to get us hyped about it. Could it be better? Definitely. Like, I think there's still a lot of unknowns, but ultimately having Zelda, Splatoon 2 and Mario in the first launch year is, when has Nintendo done better than that in a launch year of a system?
Yeah, God, there's lots of things to discuss. Like, generally, launches are shit, and I don't think anyone denies that. But every time we get a new launch, everyone seems to forget that launches are all shit and have always been shit. The PS4 launched with Killzone, it's an alright shooter, fucking Knack, and all the third-party games that you could buy on PS3 and 360 at that time anyway. That launch was nothing special. Like, I'm sorry, but it wasn't. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, it's so good compared to this. This system has a brand new Zelda game that looks to be an incredible Zelda game. I don't think you could describe anything from the PS4 launch as incredible by any stretch of the imagination. And the Xbox One was just the same. 3DS was even worse. It was fucking terrible. Like, every console launch is fucking terrible. And people forget that every console launch is terrible. They're just bad. And I think people were just expecting, because Nintendo had a loaded gun, and because they had been working on things forever and ever, that they would just fucking unload it all at once, and they just machete and machine gun people in the face. And I don't know that that would have been the smart thing to do, because once you've unloaded Zelda and Mario and Metroid and Splatoon and Mario Kart all at once, what the fuck else do you have to sell for the next few months and the next year? Like, you have to space it out, because otherwise people are going to complain that there's nothing coming. So it makes sense that they would do this. And I think the other thing to keep in mind is we don't know that this is 100% the only games, big title-wise, that we're getting in 2017. Like, E3 is still to come. There are many Nintendo Directs still to come. And as we've said, they announced a Fire Emblem Switch game at a separate event. Like, there's a potential for them to just keep announcing video games at different times in the year, at different events, and kind of break things up fragmentarily, so that they kind of get this heap of information that keeps going through. So I just think it's a little premature to judge 2017 when we don't even know everything that's coming out in 2017 yet. Like, Holiday 2017 is very likely going to have Pokemon Stars in it. And if you have Mario Odyssey and Pokemon Stars, fuck me, people are going to buy that system, you know? Like, and the thing that really makes me not worried about the Switch is a lot of people are comparing it to Wii U. And that makes sense, because Nintendo are marketing it as a console, and it looks like a console, and it has console quality graphics. But this system is every bit the successor to the Wii U as it is the successor to the 3DS. And let me tell you, as soon as Monster Hunter hits this thing, as soon as Pokemon hits this thing, as soon as Square Enix puts all their JRPGs on it, and as soon as all these other Japanese companies flock to it, and Fire Emblem comes out, and all these other games go onto it that are of the 3DS lineage, people are going to go out in droves and buy it. And that's just how it's going to happen. This system is going to be more popular than the Wii U, just for the sake that it has 3DS support. Like, everything that made that system successful is now going to be futoned, is that a word? No. Filtered? I don't know. Moved, switched, should we say, onto this console. And I think that is a really crucial thing, and we can't forget the power of Monster Hunter in Japan, the power of Pokemon across the world. Like, this system has way more possibility to succeed than the Wii U ever did. And that's why I think that, yes, everyone is annoyed by it, and everyone thinks it was a bad presentation, and I agree. Presentation was fucking awful, and I agree.
Most of the people annoyed by it are going to get one anyway.
Yeah, but I agree. The presentation was awful. I agree that 2017 looks thin. But in 2 years' time, I feel like we're going to look back and be like, why were we worried? Because this system is going to have support, and it may not have the big third-party support, but there'll probably be a lot of indies on that, and there will be a lot of Japanese games, and you know there will be software, essentially, is what I'm saying. And then the other thing that I just wanted to say is, every time Nintendo comes out with a console, people complain about lack of third-party support. And the thing that I will say is, if you already own a PS4 or Xbox One, why are you complaining about lack of third-party support? Because you're not going to buy third-party games on whatever Nintendo console has them, because you can play better versions of those on a system you already own. Why are you complaining about it? It just boggles my fucking mind. Like, I get that you want to have one system that does everything, but you've already proven that you don't by buying two, so complaining about lack of third-party support is just ridiculous, because even if they put Call of Duty on Switch, you're going to buy it on Xbox anyway. So, yeah, I just need to say that. Cause
I'd like third-party support, but I only own
Yes,
Nintendo
but Bally,
systems.
you're like fucking 1% that, you know, like...
People
like you don't exist. It's incredible that you do exist. So
I completely agree. So I'm on top of the fact that I am in a massive minority by only owning Nintendo systems. I'm also perhaps in the minority by saying I am really, really hyped about their launch lineup and 2017 in general. And we were discussing it before the podcast started, but I've already lined up in my head like 7 games I'm going to get in 2017 on the Switch that are all coming out that I'm hyped about. And none of them are big third-party games, you're right, but they're a combination of first-party and indie games, and like that is what I've enjoyed the most, even since we started this podcast. And I'm convinced the Switch is going to give me more of that, so I'm super hyped about it.
And likely will. So we'll see. Another thing I really want to quickly pick up on is, Fizz mentions, we've got Wacky Punches and Switch Sports, which is in reference to ARMS and 1-2-Switch. And here's the thing I want to pose real quick. If Nintendo had shown 1-2-Switch and then they'd been like, this is a new WarioWare game.
Exactly.
And if Nintendo had shown ARMS without motion controls, with a normal controller, and had said, this is a new Punch-Out game, who would be complaining right now? I just want to pose that right now, If they had said WarioWare and Punch-Out, who would be complaining? I just want to leave you. I just want to leave you with that. I want to leave you with that
also
thought.
Pose the question to you, MBZ, why they've gone for new IP and not gone with a Punch-Out or the what was the other example?
WarioWare.
Punch-Out or WarioWare properties. Like why isn't 1-2-Switch a WarioWare game? Because I completely agree with you. I think the second you label it as WarioWare, it's a lot zanier. It appeals to people who've already played WarioWare, and it might have had more traction. So yeah, why didn't they go for it?
I think that they just want to expand their properties. Splatoon was a success, and I think they wanted ARMS to be a similar thing.
Is there a much greater, larger, more complex WarioWare being worked on in the background that they just wanted to test the water with 1-2-Switch?
I don't know, Bally. I just I think that I think 1-2-Switch was them thinking this can be understood as a thing for the casual market, and the casual market doesn't know what WarioWare is, nor do they care about it.
That's true.
So that's why they did that, even though, as we've said, it's kind of misguided generally because of the price and all these other things. And then ARMS seems like a reaction to Splatoon, where they want to bring a new IP that has this fresh art style that is catering to this audience and is something a little bit different. And I will tell you, I'm interested in ARMS, but I don't want to play it with motion controls. I'll just play it with a normal controller. And I think if they had maybe shown it that way and marketed it that way, way more people would be interested in it. But they had to double down on this stuff that is dragging them through the mud. Like, it really is dragging them, and it's a shame, because it looks like there are some gems in there, and they just are, they're sunk under all this shit that Nintendo have dumped on top of them. So
as much as I completely agree that they should have done 1-2-Switch in some sort of bundle, made the game cheaper, thrown it in with some sort of peripheral, like we play was. I do kind of give them credit for just sort of throwing everything at the wall at this stage in time, and they're just sort of seeing what sticks. And I mean that in so many levels, where, for example, what if the first handheld focused game, say in the newest Pokemon, is like the most successful? You mentioned Monster Hunter earlier and Fire Emblem. What if these games are just so much more successful than your Mario Odysseys, your Zelda Breath of the Wild, your home console focused games, that 5 years down the line, almost all the games are very handheld focused. And likewise, I'm not saying 1-2-Switch is going to do well. I really don't think it is. But imagine it did. And all of a sudden they're like, well, this is good. We've got all these other minigame ideas and things like that ready to go. We've got the technology in the Joy-Cons. We're really going to make more games like that. And I'm not saying, like I said, that it's going to do well. And I think Zelda is going to do really well. And the Switch will continue to be a far more... I think that the handheld focus and home console games will continue to work in tandem throughout the life cycle, hopefully. But at this stage, I do kind of think that it's nice they're trying to throw everything at the wall and seeing what things might actually do quite well.
Yeah, man, it's so difficult to sift through this thing because on the one hand, the Switch looks amazing and there's Zelda and I'm so excited for it. But there's also so much fucking shit that surrounds it, and Nintendo really that presentation just messed everything up in a really annoying way that just is such a pain in the ass to deal with, you know? Like, God, this could have been a fucking slam dunk, and they just had to, like, the last hurdle, they just had to, like, fucking run face first into it and just face plant on the floor. It's frustrating. But, you know, Switch is a secondary console, and that's what I'm gonna, I think, close on Fizz's email, is Switch is a secondary console. And if you look at the lineup of Switch and you already own a PS4 or Xbox, do you think that that's still enough? Because how many games do you play in a year? And how many games do you buy in a year? You know, like, ultimately, if you already are getting all the big AAA releases on PS4, then you don't need that many Switch games to pad out your lineup. And guess what? The Switch games are all going to be Nintendo first party of an incredibly high quality. So when you have Zelda, Splatoon, and Mario in a vacuum, that looks really, really thin. But when you put it next to Persona 5, and Mass Effect Andromeda, and Red Dead Redemption 2, and Horizon Zero Dawn, and another Halo, and all this other shit that's probably coming in 2017, do you really care? You know? Like, because Switch is a secondary console for pretty much everyone, apart from Bally. So, so that's what I'll leave you with, because I think that when you take it from that perspective, it's pretty strong.
It's what we always come down to. We've mentioned a few times on this podcast. Like, Sony and Microsoft are competitors, but to a point. And like, this system is a real interesting example of where that point is and where they do their own thing that it still makes the money and still does well, and which games can rival Sony and Microsoft and do well in that space as well. So like, you're right, it's secondary, but that's kind of what Nintendo are going for.
I mean, they have to at this point. Like, they can't compete on a PAL level or on a third party level. It's just the way that the cards have fallen. So. And that's fine, and I'm perfectly fine with that. So that's how I feel. Let's then maybe, Bally, quickly run down some things. We're getting very long in the tooth here, but accessory pricing has been a big problem for people. The fact that all these controllers cost so much. Again, I go back to the point that they've stuffed a bunch of technology into these Joy-Cons, and if ultimately this technology is only used for 1-2 Switch, then fucking why did they do it? Because it's killing them right now. Like, Joy-Cons are $80. The Pro Controller is $70. And generally, I think controllers are fucking overpriced as shit. A DualShock is not worth 60 quid, I'm sorry. But, like, this is even more than that. And it's even more because they put this NFC in it, and they've got HD Rumble in it, and they've got accelerometer and gyroscopes and all this shit in it. So I really hope the pricing goes down on this stuff over time, because I'm definitely not picking a Pro Controller up day one, especially after hearing impressions from people who have played it who say that the stuff in the Joy-Con grip just feels fine anyway. I'm perfectly okay just playing Zelda on the screen with the Joy-Con grip. So,
yeah, definitely, and I'll do that for the first little while. I agree with you. The prices of controllers, and we've been through this whole rigmarole where we've had Wiimotes and nunchucks out the wazoo for years upon years, and we were like, yes, the Switch has come. We don't have to buy a bazillion peripherals anymore. Nope. Here you go. Have some more peripherals, and it's a bit concerning, but I'm happy with what you do get in the base box. That's good. I say base box. There's only one box. It's just different color box. And like, I'm glad it comes with those extra little Joy-Con things that you stick on top to make them feel a bit fatter. Do you know what they're called? I don't know. But with the wrist strap.
Whatever.
And ultimately, who am I going to be playing with this with? I'm going to be playing it with you, and like, you already own Joy-Con, so we'll get there. We will eventually get Pro Controllers. They're going to probably cost us loads. I think I feel like I ended up biting the bullet quite badly with the Pro Controller on Wii U at some point.
I didn't. I waited until it dropped to 25 quid and just jumped on it. That's what
clever.
I did.
I mean, I had that extra bit of time enjoying it with 3D World. But
totally.
Yeah, it's it's a funny one. I think that these things will maybe come down in price, and it's just once you start seeing those big multiplayer games like Splatoon 2 and things like that, that it'll be interesting to see how the markets react.
Absolutely. Well, Bally, let's move on, because I do want to talk about this Fire Emblem stuff before we close out. So there was a Fire Emblem Direct that happened, and it announced a bunch of shit, which basically tells us that Nintendo value Fire Emblem more than most other franchises under the sun.
Crazy. What happened to Advance Wars?
Bally, I feel so bad for you.
It's
Advance Wars is never coming back at this point. Intelligent Systems are like, they're riding Fire Emblem to the death.
I mentioned it earlier, but this is what Fire Emblem Awakening started. It's just completely spiraled.
It's a chain reaction that has just been unstoppable. So, the first announcement in that Direct was one of the most insane things that I have probably ever seen in any announcement of anything. They are remaking the Japanese-only second Fire Emblem game called Fire Emblem Gaiden, which is this weird, as you know, as many Japanese second entries in franchises were back then, like Mario 2 and Zelda 2 and Metroid 2 and all these things, all very kind of breaking with the conventions of their first in the series. This game is being remade fully in 3D on the 3DS and is coming out in May and is coming out everywhere at the same time, so Europe doesn't get fucked. Just so much of this shit is insane, and they showed like the comparison in graphics where it changes from Gaiden into the new version, which is the title is Fire Emblem Echoes Shadows of Valentia, which to some degree tells me Echoes and the way it was placed looks like a kind of sub-series thing. Shadows of Valentia seems like the title of what that actual version is, because it's based on the continent of Valentia, which was part of that game. But Echoes seems like, hey, they could probably reuse this on a bunch of different things and do more Fire Emblem remakes in the future. But number one, it's a 3DS game. Number two, it's a remake that is kind of panning out this 3DS lineup in 2017, which I just didn't expect. And remember, Bally, when you made that prediction about how Nintendo were not going to announce any big games for the next year because they're going to go all in on Switch?
They've already done that.
Guess
Direct
what?
beforehand, where they announced stuff, and now they've already done like another one where they've announced the game coming out in May.
Yeah, and not only that, like the Fire Emblem Warriors game is coming to new 3DS as well. So like, let's talk about Echoes real quick, Bally. You watched the Direct. What did you think of it? Did it impress you at all? I know that you are someone who suffers from burnout on particular franchises more than I do. I'm day one on this, of course. What did you think of it?
It looks really solid. There was some like behind the back third person stuff going on, like wandering
dungeon
around.
Crawling, essentially.
Dungeon crawling. There's some really interesting stuff in there. Like, had Fates not happened, I'd definitely be intrigued. I'd buy this day one if Fates hadn't happened. Like you said, I'm a bit burned out, perhaps.
Yeah, but Fates was like, hey, here's 3
Fates
campaigns.
Is like, you want a burger? Well, here's a dessert and another burger and another dessert and another burger and another dessert. And I was like, oh. Give me a break, and now this game comes along and it's just, oh, for God's sake.
But Bally, it's just a waffle thin. It's a waffle thin. You'll easily digest this.
Not quite.
You're not quite Mr. Creosote, unfortunately.
I thought it looked great, and I'm not obviously as into all the previous Fire Emblem games as you are, MBZ, but it looks just as solid. It's a great engine that we've seen used already, and they've just gone with that again, and I can see why they've done it. It's looking good.
I'm very interested how mechanically different this will be from the original entry. I know they didn't have support conversations and things
with the Fates weapon triangle.
Yeah, and apparently this game didn't have. Oh, there's something that's not coming to mind right now. But there are features that we as modern Fire Emblem fans have come to appreciate and just have as a matter of course. Oh, it was weapon degradation that they removed from Fates, that actually this game didn't have a weapon degradation either. So there's lots of ideas that have been plucked from the past into modern Fire Emblem games. But yeah, apparently like explorable world map and like going into dungeons and stuff. It seems really cool. Like it's very different, and it seems like the kind of hardcore Fire Emblem that the hardcore fan would like. Like when they announce a Switch game, and that seems like that's probably going to be the sequel to Fates, you know, or you know the sequel to what they've been doing recently with Fire Emblem, which is appeal to this more, you know, modern crowd that has come to like it in recent years.
That's when I'm going to jump back in for the Switch.
That's
version,
fair enough.
And
but yeah, this seems like, hey, this is a love letter to the hardcore Fire Emblem person.
Oh,
and
definitely.
I'm all in. I'm totally going to play that. So hey, it's going to be weird because it'll be 19th of May, and I will have owned a Switch for 2 months at that point. So going back to 3DS to play a game, I don't know how I'll feel.
You'll be like, it's burning my eyes.
Yeah, I know. Can't handle it anymore.
Talking of burning your eyes, Emblem, why don't we talk about the mobile game?
Well, yeah, let's quickly mention the other two announcements, because they were very much minor things. They said the Fire Emblem Switch game is coming in 2018. We literally saw nothing about it. It was just a white screen being like, it's coming. It's on Switch. It's like, to be honest, they didn't even need to announce this because everyone knew that they were going to make one. So
it's like when they announced for Wii U, they're like, we're working on a Zelda and a Mario game. It's
like,
well, I hope you were. Are you kidding me?
Bloody better be. So, you know, that's the thing. And then Warriors, they really didn't show much more. They just showed Crom kind of slicing some people up. But Warriors is one of those things where I'm like, if I can be bearded Hector and just hit people with an axe, I don't know, that might be fun. So I'm falling to the dark side, Bally. You got to pull me back up. I don't know if I'm going to fall down this hole, but we'll see. Fire Emblem Heroes, though, the most mobile-ass mobile game I've ever seen in the history of mobile games. Seems like Nintendo fucking got hooked up with some Square Enix people and with some fucking, like, Japanese mobile companies, and we're like, hey, how do you extort your customer the most possible way, and how do you make a thing that makes you billions of dollars a day? And they're like, okay, so you do this where you do orbs, and then you get people to buy microtransactions, and then you make an ugly art style.
Oh, you want your favorite Fire Emblem character? That'll be $1.99.
Yeah, and then you call it Fire Emblem Heroes, because that's going to do well in the iTunes store. Like, you look at every aspect of this game, and it's like, fuck me, is this a mobile game? Like, it is just fucking lathering itself in, like, everything. It's like fucking, ooh, yeah, I'm a mobile game. I'm going to make millions of dollars. Come fucking play me, you know? That's the way I felt about this entire presentation.
I think it looks cool.
Yeah, Bally, how do you feel?
I like that it's overly simplified. I like that you're still keeping your phone upright, which is an interesting decision.
It seems like a theme that's run through these Nintendo mobile games, is the idea of holding it in one hand on the train.
Exactly. And I think that's quite a nice thing to do, that keeps it separate to anything else they ever make on other systems at the same time, perhaps. Like it's a way of sort of saying, yeah, this is a mobile game because it's the one with the funny rectangle vertical. And it does look overly simplified. It does look like it's got a lot of microtransactions for your favorite characters, but it also looks playable without microtransactions and just to have a decent bit of Fire Emblem on the go. It's got a very simplistic weapons triangle.
Apparently has a full story as well, which I was surprised at. They were like, hey, there's like a campaign. Yeah. Yeah,
and I'm quite impressed with how it kind of all looked like it came together, really, and I'd be intrigued to try it. For free. I mean,
it is free, so you don't have a barrier to entry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not prepared to spend money on it as of yet, but it looked cool.
Yeah, I mean, of course I'll download this because it's a Fire Emblem game, so I'm going to play it. But I expressed like huge disdain at the art style when I first saw it. I think I walked that back a little bit at this point. I don't think it's as fucking egregious as I first.
It zoomed in on your live reaction, Mz, and you were a little more calm about it. You were initially like, "Oh my god, what's that?"
I was like, "What the fuck have they done?" But yeah, I like that idea of the attack animations. They kind of throw this really much more detailed piece of artwork across the screen every time someone attacks, which is kind of awesome. And yeah, I don't know how simple it will be versus how hardcore, because ultimately these maps are single screen maps. Like they said, you can't kind of scroll them around. Like you just have to do it within this like 5x10 grid or whatever it is.
Maybe a bit bigger than that, but you're right. It's not big at all.
No, it's not huge. But like ultimately, Fire Emblem is a perfect game for mobile because you're just moving troops through squares, and that is so easily done on a touchscreen. Like it makes a lot of sense, and it's very versatile for that platform. So I think it fits well. There is stuff that is mobile game about it, but you know what? It's 2017. You got to make money on mobile games, so they're gonna do that. And I think Square Enix have been pretty successful doing that with Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, whatever it's called. The mechanic I think is called gacha, which is the idea of like wanting to get your favorite character, and so you basically invest these orbs, and it's like a random slot machine thing where you just put something in and do you get them? I didn't get them this time, maybe I can pay to get more orbs, and I think there's a mechanic where the more orbs you do at once, the like higher likelihood you have of getting something you want. A bit like
the good old Smash Brothers trophies on GameCube where you invest more coins for a better chance of getting a new trophy.
Yeah, the percentages go down the more you put into it, so it's real fucking scummy. And God, I don't think mobile is this fucking bastion of heaven. So it's not like I can fault Nintendo for basically acting like Satan in hell. Like if you're in hell, you might as well do as Satan does, is what I say. So
yeah, they're in hell. They're gonna make money, and we want that money they make in hell to fund the nice projects on Switch.
Exactly. I want Fire Emblem Heroes to fund Fire Emblem Switch. So fair enough. That's what they're going to do. But that's coming out very soon, Bally. We're probably going to be talking about it in a couple of weeks' time because it's the 2nd of February on Android and on iOS devices at the same time.
I'm intrigued to see the promotion it gets compared to something like Super Mario Run.
Yeah,
will it when I go in my app store? It'll just be like, bam, Fire Emblem Heroes, or will I have to scroll a little bit? Like I'm intrigued.
I think it'll be at the top of the list just because it's another Nintendo.
Or like number 2
game
behind Super Mario Run.
Maybe. Well, I think this has the potential to blow the fuck up because it's built like every other mobile game, but it also has Nintendo's sheen and polish behind it. And it's also named aptly. It's a sort of thing where you can see it stand alongside Clash of Clans.
I am so intrigued to see if either of us, anyone we know, comes up to us and says, I've been playing Fire Emblem Heroes, and they have no link to any Fire Emblem game before that. Like,
right.
Let's just see if there's any potential of that happening. I'm
that's very interesting. Because I don't know, there's the thing about mobile games, this kind of micromanagey style thing that Fire Emblem kind of leans into. With all these town builders and all this shit. Like, I think people on mobile are kind of used to that sort of thing.
It aesthetically looks like Fire Emblem, these games, don't they? They're kind of going for a very similar fantasy-esque.
Yeah, fantasy medieval, like, as a theme on mobile is very popular. So, yeah, it could do very well. I don't know. This could be their most successful mobile game. I think it has the potential to be, weirdly enough, despite, having far less name recognition than Mario. I think that there is a potential for it to blow out the hell up. So we shall see. But aside from that, I think that's pretty much everything that we have to discuss here, Bally. We went in deep. A lot of topics to talk about. A lot of feelings that we both have about Switch and about its first year and what we're going to be dealing with and all that stuff. But ultimately, I'm still excited to get my Switch on March 3rd, and I think a lot of that has to do with people from the event saying, like, this is a quality piece of hardware.
Yeah.
Like, people are saying, man, the screen looks awesome, and everything feels great, and it has a heft to it. Like, this seems like the most mature, high-quality product Nintendo's ever made. And that's exciting.
Yeah, definitely. It's a new Zelda game with a new Nintendo system. Like, what more can you want on launch? Like, we had a huge discussion on like launch lineup and year of set 2017, but on a very simplistic level of new Nintendo system and new Zelda, like, it's so much hype. It's similar to how we felt with the Wii and with the DS, but fun times. Like, it's big times ahead.
As always, we want to play more Nintendo, so this is what it's going to do for us. So, I quickly wanted to also mention that the Fire Emblem Heroes thing has the thing where you can vote for characters to be in the game. And
You're putting out a shout out, MBZ, aren't you?
I'm putting out a shout out. You could all vote for Hector. If you don't vote for Hector, I'll come and kill you real bad. With his axe.
I don't think Hector appeared a single time in that entire direct.
He didn't, and it fucking really drove me insane.
So you know
there's
for a
Lynn,
fact
there's Ellie Wood, there's Hector.
They are siding with the characters already that were already highlighted in that direct.
Yeah, they're fucking like doing their propaganda. Let me tell you, don't
Sword
listen to
propaganda
their propaganda.
is what you
Sword
call it.
propaganda. We need some fucking axe equality in this world. Axes are necessary and needed.
They've got a new favorite axe character, and I think her name's Camilla. And she's got a lot
I wonder
going for
why
her
people
compared
like
to Hector.
Camilla. It's really for her axe, isn't it? It's all about her axe. That's the
her
defining characteristic of Camilla.
It's not as good as Hector's axe. She's got a way better axe.
So yeah, you can go and vote there. I believe it's like 13 days of voting, and I've been logging in every day to choose a new character. So
are there no microtransactions for extra votes?
No, thank God.
Thank God.
Bally, I was telling you this earlier, but I think I might have more fun just voting for characters than I do actually playing this mobile game because I just like assembling lists. I just think that's a fun thing to do. But yeah, that's
That would be cool if they'd done opened this voting for an actual Fire Emblem game that wasn't a mobile game or something.
Oh God, could you imagine if they did like a Fire Emblem All Stars where it was like these are the characters that we've chosen
or just
in this game,
exclusively a Fire Emblem list for the next Smash Brothers character or something.
Oh boy,
now you're talking.
This is why we need a Fire Emblem Soul Calibur. This is why we need that game so bad.
Well,
I really
you're getting
want
a
that.
Warriors. So Soul Calibur must be the next step.
Well, we'll see. Okay, well, Valley, I think we've gone on long enough, so let's wrap things up. Where can people find us on the internet? Where are we found? What do we do?
You can find the podcast on Twitter. It's at TNL Podcast. That's at TNL Podcast. It's the best place to go to find out when the new episodes are out, when there's new videos on our YouTube channel, which is, of course, youtube.com/ThisNintendoLife. And of course everything else goes through that Twitter account. I'm on Twitter. I'm at Ballyman91. That's BALLYMAN91. That is also my name on the Miiverse. I'm gonna get into a bit of Majora's Mask on the 3DS, so hopefully posting some stuff about that. MBZ, where can you be found?
You can find me at Lordnbz on the Twitters. I'm also on the Miiverse there. And you can find us, download us in many places. We're on iTunes, we're on Stitcher, we are on YouTube, of course, our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ThisNintendoLife. We just recently wrapped up our Let's Play of Affordable Space Adventures. We're going to be jumping into something new, so keep an eye out. That'll be fun times. Of course, we have our ongoing series, RIP Wii U, where me and Bally go through some of the best Wii U games in the lead up to the Switch, and that was fun. We had a good time getting all those knocks out, and Bally, before we go, we have someone reviewed us on iTunes, and that's the thing you can do. If you want us to be cool, then review us on iTunes, and we'll be cooler. So, Bally, do you want to read out the review that we recently
Our review is from Raydell Empire. As a longtime fan of Lordnbz, when he was doing Pokemon battles, I rediscovered This Nintendo Life podcast in around 2015. Ever since I got into your podcast, I haven't stopped, and it really helps me beat my games. You guys have interesting thoughts, and I like how you guys disagree from time to time. Keep being great. Well, we really appreciate that, Raydell Empire. And
yes,
like you said, MZ, if anyone has any thoughts that they'd like to bring together and email us or review us, you can find us on iTunes, and of course our email address, which is thisnintendolife@gmail.com. That is thisnintendolife@gmail.com.
It is indeed, and don't worry, Bally and I will continue to disagree by shouting at each other, because he's always wrong about Wind Waker being
indeed
the best game ever. It's not. So let's close things out. Thank you everyone for listening, and we'll be back 2 weeks time, hopefully with a more traditional show with some emails and all that good stuff.
And 2 weeks closer to the Switch.
Oh god, it just keeps marching on. Time just disappearing, Bally, evaporating before our very eyes.
It's not long.
It isn't. So yes, we'll see you then. Thanks again for listening, and goodbye. The musical interlude used on today's show was Funky Waters from Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, copyright Nintendo 2014.